Well, again, it's really great to meet you, Anthony. It's a real pleasure and an honor. In my role, we are ad sales focused, right? So a lot of the clients that are going to be watching, or the audience for this particular segment, are going to be our advertisers, our agency clients, and internal folks that are involved in basically selling all of the different shows that we have on air across Latin America.
Right.
But sort of beforehand, I just wanted to ask a quick question. What was it like to go to school with that 1989 team that won the men's national championship when you were at UNLV?
Well, I wish I could say I saw them on campus, but they were never on campus.
Did you go to the games though? I mean, you went to the Thomas and Mack, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it was, well, I take that back. I might have saw Larry Johnson a couple of times in Union. But everybody, the funny thing about those guys is they would actually carry their books in pillowcases when they did go to school. No one knows that. But if you're a G from Vegas, it's pillowcases.
Yeah.
And I remember getting a ride home from Moses Scurry, and
wow.
He had this long polo jacket on that was probably $500. I would just wanted to just tear off and steal for myself. But it was pretty cool. It was, we would work all night, and then we get up in the morning, we would have the cocktails and go to the 10 o'clock game against Arkansas and Todd Day, and that Shark Tank would be so loud you couldn't even hear yourself breathe. Your eyeballs would rattle. And it was quite a run when we crushed Duke by 30. So it was a great time. It was
an amazing year, especially, 'cause I guess a couple of years before that, you'd lost in the final four. But at any rate, great. I'm sure it was a terrific memory.
Probably a little shenanigan about that one going on in the Final Four. That was a very peculiar game, to say the least.
You mean in the ones at Seton Hall or the Duke winning?
We lost against Duke. That was I would say this probably was a little bit of a shenanigan.
Yeah.
That's all I could say. Yeah.
It's hard to remember. I mean, I'm roughly your age, a little older.
No, I remember Stacey Ogman doing a lot of turnovers. It was just, the team was so beyond talented that probably shouldn't have happened. I remember they lost by, I think, a point or something. But
yeah,
as long as we won the championship against Duke, that was cool. But it was quite a time it was a whole different era. That's all I could say. And it
really was
exciting.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the game is totally different, and and Tark obviously has passed away since then. But it was that was a great era in college hoops. I mean, you had guys that were staying around a long time too, right? I mean, it wasn't one and done. At any rate, I digress.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so did you ever think when you were starting off that you'd be at 800 episodes?
Oh no, you're trying to get past 9. I mean, because I was so new in television, and because I had senior people working with me as partners, they would always say the same thing. We just got to get the first 3 out. We want to get a back 9 pickup. I don't know what any of that meant. It sounded like golf terms, back 9. But what they're trying to tell me is, normally shows never see a second season. They're just looking forward to get to the back 9. And, I remember they were putting a lot of pressure on us that the first 3 episodes had to show. And I want to say that the first episode, they called us up to say, hey, if you guys can just hold 70% of the Fugitives ratings with Tim Daly, you'd be deemed a success. We were Friday at 9 on October 6th of 2000. I think we beat them by like 121%. We're like 23 million viewers on a Friday, which is completely
unheard of.
And I think honestly, maybe 4 weeks later, my boss called us in to say, you're going to Thursday at 9. We were there for 12 straight seasons.
Oh, that's amazing. Did you realize, obviously you knew you had a hit on your hands pretty early on, but did you think that you would also be like fathering a whole genre? I mean, there's obviously we had cop shows, but like, the procedural as in really done by you guys at CSI it really birthed a whole generation, a whole genre.
I tell you, people don't believe this, but I've seen it happen. A lot of times, you don't really know what you're doing. Why when you get green lit? Like we really, I mean, when I tell you that we decided on episode 2, this was going to be a close-ended procedural show. That's how late in the game we decided that. The rationale was we want to be able to go into syndication if we get that far, and be able to do rinse and repeat so people aren't confused by the continuity. I mean, the only thing technological that was in our conversation was TiVo. So there was VCRs, there was no streaming, there was no binging, there was no Netflix, there was no Hulu, none of that. I look back and go, how in the world could we have done 24 episodes on one case without having audience attrition and exhaustion? But we literally made the call to do rinse and repeat, close in a procedural by episode 2 that late in the game. And if we had any longer runners, it was going to be a character arc that wouldn't impact the experience of just watching a mystery of the week. And we stood by that way late in the game, and we never got off of it.
Yeah. How, in terms of, obviously the sort of that having it done and dusted, how do you balance telling a really good story with, as you were talking about before, the sort of violence and stress and really high pressure situation that these law enforcement officers find them in, with not overstimulating the audience without getting them worked up or worried or concerned or feeling like this is too much. It's too gruesome, emotional.
Well, when we first aired the pilot, I wasn't there for testing in Las Vegas. Apparently, there's a group of men and a group of women. I don't know how they get them. That's a whole other ballgame. And then there's these dials, right? So they tell the audience, hey men, hey women, in separate areas. Dial up if you like, dial down if you don't like, and press this button if you would have changed the channel. That's the instructions. And I remember getting a phone call early in the testing because when Royce Harmon in the pilot is in the bathtub and he has a gunshot wound to his chest, we had Pupa stage 3 kind of maggots crawling inside the orifice as an excuse for my main character, Gil Grissom, who's an entomologist, to go in and go, hey, and spoon out one of the maggots and talk about the Pupa stage 3 and the time of death. And it was the whole gag for the entomology thing. Well, when the audience saw that, it was like, they all turned it off. And so they called me from Las Vegas and said, hey, we're going to have to take some frames out of the sort of orifice shot because, audiences are getting turned off because they'll think this show is about gore or about overt violence. Now, of course, as a 29-year-old, I'm like, no, it's part of the whole thing. And I'm getting all flustered. But what they were trying to say is, look, the audience, you'll have to earn the right to do that with them as you teach them what forensics is. And once they understand that it's part of the construction that will unpack information forensically to help solve the case, then you can go crazy with it. And look, season 1, the hotels were like, you're not killing anybody here. No one dies in Las Vegas. And then when the show got hot about season 3, they're like, here, we're hanging from the chandeliers. Don't worry about it. And because they understood as the Palms, right, that just putting the Palms on national television, that 20-something million people, was a wonderful piece of business for the town. And the Palms was really the first, I think, between that and Real World, they kind of got it early and had a lot of benefit to it.
Excellent. You've obviously been working with Jerry Bruckheimer, who is an amazing story in and of himself, right? The kid from Detroit, has had that kind of longevity. What's it like to work with a guy, like Jerry Bruckheimer for these past 20 years?
In case anybody has any questions about how much does Jerry Bruckheimer do, let the creator of CSI, the franchise, tell you. He does everything. He reads the scripts. He offers notes. He watches cuts. He approves directors. He approves the DP. He gives guidance on the lighting. He attends all the award shows. He's about as hands-on as it gets. He's busy with his feature career, but he's not somebody who's thrown their name on something. He's definitely involved. He's involved in the casting. He really is a partner, and he's a champion of what we do. He's a great sort of godfather of the franchise, an awesome ambassador. And I have a lot of respect for him because he really does do the work. He doesn't write the scripts, obviously,
right.
But he's definitely involved in them, and he gives thoughts. And it's funny because I always, whenever I wrote like for the finale, I would always brace, because we have this running joke that Jerry always has we call it the Jerry thread. It's like that one little thread he'll pull, like in Act 2. That can make the whole thing just go to mush. And I'm like, oh God, don't give me the Jerry thread. So I got the Jerry thread note in the finale, and I fixed it early, but boy, he finds a way to find that one little thing. And
so like, how hard is that for you? Like, so you've got, I imagine, a different writer's room for each of the shows, right? How do you like find a group of writers that are going to maintain that sort of distinctive voice? They're going to keep those threads so that each one feels apart from the setting, right? Obviously, Miami's different than New York, and New York's different than Vegas. So, but like, how do you balance those writers' rooms and work with them to keep that voice sort of consistent and within the DNA of each of the shows?
Well, it starts with a showrunner. The showrunner has to be able to subscribe to our system.
Mm-hmm.
And, we hire talented showrunners that understand what we are. We know the franchise very well. So we know what's not our show and what is our show.
Okay.
And if you don't write our show, then you'll have to rewrite our show. So, we're very strict about that. Look, there are some writers that don't get it. There's some showrunners that don't get it, and they're not around very long. We are a closed-ended procedural drama where the evidence is a star and tells a story. We want to not be emotionally vacant, so we want to have characters that you can relate to and empathize with and care about and root for. Where the show can go wrong with an early writer is to write a lot of hocus pocus and forensics that's emotionally thin. And, the other way to do it wrong is to have this much forensics and begin to write something that's Sopranos. That's just not what we are. Like, we know what we are. And the audience will expect to have a great mystery with compelling characters, with good twists and turns, a nice whodunit, and then wrap it all up in a nice bow for the most part. So you feel like when the show is over, you're going to make it through the day and you're safe and protected. And that's a very, very strict mantra we have in the show.
How much time do they spend, or do you spend, with forensic scientists, right? Like getting into the science. I mean, I would imagine it's somewhat at least helpful to have.
Yeah, we have tech advisors in the room. We have tech advisors on set to make sure, you hold the gun the right way and you pipette the right way and all that. But we're very well versed in forensics. So when we have very, very good researchers with a very, very deep Rolodex. So when we need information on, I'll give you an example. I wrote an episode called Feeling the Heat. It was about leaving a child in a car. And I needed some forensics on Tay-Sachs disease, which is predominantly in the Jewish conversation. And when you have Tay-Sachs disease, there's arching of the neck, there's flopping of the arms. So, we'll do a lot of research on that. And out of that will come other plot points too. So we don't know everything, but we know enough to kind of get the forensic ball rolling. Then when the forensic experts give us back the information to write the scripts or for the outline phase, it'll actually unpack other twists and turns forensically. So, and the more you do it, the better you are, and the more knowledge you get. And you have to be like a vacuum where it excites you to learn about forensic science. And I'm one of the biggest fans of that. So I'll soak up anything I hear and try to put it in the show.
That's great. Earlier, I heard you when you were talking to some of those reporters. You were talking a little bit about David Caruso, and and you also look back, over the 20 years, right? Larry Fishburne, Elizabeth Shue, Ted Danson, William Peterson, right? Gary Sinise, Marge Helgenberg.
Marg, don't say Marg.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it's an amazing like collection, right? I mean, it's a Kevin Bacon worthy, certainly, in terms of 6 Degrees. But with that broad of a range of talents, do you find that it's a challenge to tell a story that lets them explore their own range, or are you just writing the story and they find the way to bring their method and their performance to that particular story?
Yeah, it's the latter. You know, we're looking for compelling actors. Sometimes the household name is part of the conversation, I guess. I always thought CSI is about making stars, not hiring stars. Arguably, Billy Peterson and Mark Helgeberger were stars, not necessarily can open their own movie, but they were definitely respectable stars back in those days, and they had a great fan base. But you know, we have to entertain what their skill set is, but we're not churning everything inside out to accommodate their skill set. So we will create the character, we'll ask the actor to subscribe to the character, and then we will make sure the character is in front of the actor, so that's consistent, and make them conform to it. We know, and again, we know that this actor can't do all these big words. We know that this actor can't work past 10 o'clock because that person gets tired. Or we know that this person doesn't. Excuse me? No, we know that sometimes this actor doesn't do well with guest stars. We'll make some adjustments, but we will ask the actors to do their job and conform to the characters we created.
Excellent, excellent.
Alfredo, I think we are now on time.
Okay, can I just ask one last question?
Is that part of the list that you had?
Yes.
That way you worked? Okay, please. Last question.
So the last one is, after 20 years, the fan base obviously continues to be passionate. What's your relationship with the fans? How do you relate with them? Do they give you feedback through social media, through other kinds of channels? What kind of a relationship do you have with the fans of the show?
I mean, you know, truth be told, I don't necessarily have one of these social media relationships with the fans. And I do that on purpose because I don't want to be ahead of the show. And it's not Anthony Zuiker who they're in love with, it's the show. So my best contribution to honor them is to work inside a very talented team to provide them great episodes and great characters. But I never wanted my name to be synonymous with CSI, with the fan base, because that would take thunder away from the show. You know, when they write the history books, Anthony Zuiker will be right in the middle of it, sure, as the creator and the person that's been involved in this franchise since day one. But I want our fans to have a relationship with our actors, our storylines, our show, each other, and just know that in the background's a little guy like me from Vegas who did something extraordinary.
That's great. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.